Hey everybody, welcome to day 5 of the Core Set 2020 Limited Set Review here on the Mana Leek. I'm John as always, and today we're going to be taking a look at all of the green cards in Core Set 2020. After tomorrow, all we have left is the multicolored, the artifact, and the lands, and there's way less of those than we've had for the past freaking year of Ravnica, so it's going to go a little bit faster. Remember, limited set review, my opinions, they may change over time. Yada yada yada. Up first, we have Barkhide Troll. Barkhide Troll is green for a creature troll at uncommon. It's a 2/2. Barkhide Troll enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's a 3/3. Pay 1, remove a +1/+1 counter from Barkhide Troll. Barkhide Troll gains hexproof until end of turn. What if I told you we lived in a world where we had a set where this was the only creature with hexproof on it, and it doesn't even really have it on it? Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Anyways, this card's fine. It's fine. It's a 3/3 for 2. It's a little bit hard to cast that 2, but if you are heavy green and it comes down on turn 2, that's great. And if something's going to happen to it, you can take that counter off, give it hexproof for one singular turn, save it, and then you've got a 2/2. It's less good, but still what you paid for. Yeah, this is a totally fine card. It's a C+. I'll play every copy. It's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fine, and it's the only creature with hexproof on it. Up next is Brightwood Tracker. Brightwood Tracker is 3 and a green for a creature elf scout at common. It's a 2/4. Pay 5 and a green and tap it. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's Vivian's Grizzly for a lot more mana, and you have to tap it. Not a gigantic fan. It is a 2/4 for 4, which is normal, but unexciting as far as a creature goes. It's a Pillar Field Ox or whatever. But 6 mana, and you got to tap it to find that creature, hopefully. You know, if the game's super stalled, sure. What else are you going to do? But I think green just has better, more reactive things to do. So I've got this at like a C-. I think I'm going to cut it quite a bit. 6 mana and tap is just way too expensive for me. C- for Brightwood Tracker. Up next is the green Cavalier of Thorns. Cavalier of Thorns is 2 green for a creature elemental knight at mythic. It's a 5/6 with reach. When Cavalier of Thorns enters the battlefield, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. Put a land card from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest into your graveyard. When Cavalier of Thorn dies, you may exile it. If you do, put another target card from your graveyard on top of your library. I don't know if you got what I was putting down there in the way that I read that card. This one's really disappointing. Like, really disappointing. It's a 5/6 reach for 5, which I guess it's big. It's certainly big. You're even getting a bonus toughness, and reach. Reach is relevant in this format, but yikes, this card's not exciting. It doesn't seem like a slam first pick. Looking at the top 5 cards of your library and putting a land onto the battlefield, getting to ramp on turn 5, I don't care. I don't care. It doesn't even fix your mana because you might not find the land that you actually want. And when it dies, getting to put a card on top of my library, no. Nothing about this card makes me want to pick this very highly. If I am green and pack 3 I see this, sure, I'll grab it. I don't know that I ever take this pack 1, because in practice somebody else is going to take this. I'm not taking this first pick, I don't think. Ever? I don't think ever. And I don't know if I'm taking a second or third pick. In the green deck, it's like a B-. It's value. It's value, and if you're in green, you can cast it. That's cool, and it's big. But this is so massively below the other Cavaliers. So I'm at like a B- on it, but super unexcited by it. Centaur Courser is up next. Centaur Courser is 2 and a green for a creature Centaur Warrior at common. It's a 3/3 with flavor text. It's a vanilla 3/3 for 3. I'm always fine with Centaur Courser, though it used to be actively good in Theros. Nowadays, with power creep, it's just fine. It's not quite a C+, it's just a middle-of-the-road C for Centaur Courser. Elvish Reclaimer is up next. Elvish Reclaimer is a single green mana for a creature elf warrior at common. It's a 1/2. Elvish Reclaimer gets +2/+2 as long as there are 3 or more land cards in your graveyard. Pay 2, tap it, sacrifice a land, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. I've heard people getting pretty excited about this for constructed, but for limited, it's interesting. Sacking a land to color fix is kind of rough, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Just filtering lands out of your deck, that's way less good than you think it is. If you have literally nothing else to do, sure, but there's a lot of math articles that you can go and read out there to find out that thinning your deck of a land is actually not really that impactful. But like I said, if you've got the time, you got the mana, and it's on the board, you're not going to do it. And the way that I historically flood out all of the time, well, maybe I should love this card. The payoff for all of this, though, is that you get a 3/4. Probably pretty late in the game, where a 3/4 is fine, but not amazing. So I'm just super not sold that this will actually work out properly. I've got this in the D range just because there's so much work that you've got to do to it. I want to play more impactful cards. Yeah, it's 1 mana, but as I constantly have to remind people, card slots in your deck are very costly, and I don't think this one's worth it. Up next is Feral Invocation. Feral Invocation is 2 and a green for an enchantment aura at common. It's got flash, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. This card was in Theros, which is why it exists. Because realistically, it's 2 and a green for an instant that says put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Blah, 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 proliferate, blah, blah, blah. It's not exactly the same, but that's basically what this is. And that makes it a fair bit better than your typical aura. It's a little bit harder to get instantly blown out with this card. It's somewhat unlikely, and or you can play around your opponent having bounce or something to negate this card. And you can use this in combat to get through some extra damage to kill off a creature, and it sticks around, unlike a combat trick, and it's not that expensive for 3 mana. I actually don't mind Feral Invocation. I remember playing this card a decent amount in Theros. I've got it at like a C. It's not crazy or anything, but I think I might shock you by how often I'm going to play this particular aura. C for Feral Invocation. Ferocious Pup is up next. Ferocious Pup is 2 and a green for a creature wolf at common. It's an 0/1 for 3, but when it enters the battlefield, you do make a 2/2 green wolf creature token. It's a 2/3 for 2, except it's actually a 2/2 and an irrelevant 0/1. Sure, blinking and bouncing, this would be pretty cute, but you know, that's a number of cards for you to get there by getting just another 2/2. Ultimately, this is just sort of filler C level for me. It goes up to C+ if you can really super duper abuse that ETB trigger. If you can, good job, but at the start of this format, I'm looking at this as a C, just filler-ish level. There is some wolf synergy, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but by itself, C for Ferocious Pup. Up next is Gargos Vicious Watcher. Gargos Vicious Watcher is 3 green for a legendary creature Hydra at rare. It's an 8/7 for 6. It's got Vigilance. Hydra spells you cast cost 4 less to cast. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Gargos Vicious Watcher fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So, just for those wondering, if your Hydra spell, like most of them are, is green X, what you do is you say, I'm casting this for 10, and then you pay 6 mana, and X is still 8, I guess, in that scenario. So again, like all of the color rare legendary creatures, you really need to be deep in this color to play this card, but this one's a good payoff. It's an 8/7. For cheaper than you should ever be paying. This isn't an 8-drop like the demon is, it's only 6 mana. Vigilance, that means it gets to attack and block. The Hydra spells thing, that doesn't really matter. There is one other Hydra in this set, but it's rare, so you just can't expect to ever combine these 2 rares. And whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, this gets to fight something. That's pretty cool, because that basically turns all of your opponent's removal into a Bone Splinters. And a Bone Splinters that they don't get to choose what they're sacrificing. This card's pretty darn solid. I think I would first pick this despite the color thing. I have to be ready to move out of green and move out of ever playing this card if the packs don't quite go my way. But I think Gargos is a very powerful bomby card. I think it's just a straight A. Again, you gotta make sure you can cast it. Don't play this in your 6 forest deck or your 7 forest deck. Even 8 forests, I'm a slight bit hesitant about this depending on what other sort of fixing I have. But yeah, an A for Gargos Vicious Watcher. Up next is some fixing. Gift of Paradise. Gift of Paradise is 2 and a green for an enchantment aura at common enchant land. When Gift of Paradise enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. Enchanted land has tap, add 2 mana of any 1 color. Yeah, if you have a splash, play it. If you have one of the XXX casting cost creatures, play it. You need to ramp? Well, ramping on 3 is less good, but I guess. If none of those are true, then you probably just don't bother with Gift of Paradise, but in this format, it's looking like one of those is going to be true. So yeah, this is like a C. You'll play this when you need to and not when you not. And when it's something you really need, it's going to go up a little bit. So C for Gift of Paradise. Greenwood Sentinel is up next. Greenwood Sentinel is 1 and a green for a creature elf scout at common. It's a 2/2 with vigilance. Yeah, it's solid filler. It's also star of the Oops All Auras on 1 creature decks that you only ever really see on Arena that we saw in M19 a lot. It's a solid C, no better, no worse. It's fine filler. C for Greenwood Sentinel. Up next is Growth Cycle. Growth Cycle is 1 and a green for an instant at common. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. It gets an additional +2/+2 until end of turn for each card named Growth Cycle in your graveyard. The rest of that text doesn't really matter a whole bunch. It's an expensive giant growth the first time, and even the second time it's not double, but it is more, but without getting trample, unless all of your creatures somehow have trample or you have a ton of trample cards, this isn't going to do as much as you want it to do. It's a pretty standard combat trick. It's in the C range. You'll play it if you have a spot, and if you don't hurt your deck. Don't go out of your way to try to play this. Just a C for Growth Cycle. Up next is Healer of the Glade. Healer of the Glade is a single green mana for a creature elemental at common. It's a 1/2. When Healer of the Glade enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. No interest. I don't want to play a 1/2 for 1 just because it gains me 3 life. 0 interest. You can play better cards. Like I just said in this video, card slots in your deck cost a lot. That's the biggest cost you have in a limited match of Magic, in a limited tournament of Magic. A single mana is cheap, but the card, that's expensive. So F for Healer of the Glade. I'm never, ever playing this card. Up next is Howling Giant. Howling Giant is 5 green for a creature giant druid at uncommon. It's a 5/5 with reach. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2/2 green wolf creature tokens. Maybe this format's really slow. We're seeing a lot of these 7-drop creatures that, I mean, this can't really not be 7, but just aren't as impactful as I want 7-drops to be. And with the flyer deck, with the blue-white flyer, to a lesser extent the red-white flyer deck, I don't know that you have the time to just casually saunter up to 7 mana. If you get there, you do get a 5/5 and 2 2/2s. The 2 2/2s aren't going to be super relevant on turn 7, but they're going to be there, and your 5/5 is going to be fine, and it's got reach, but I don't know. I'm starting out not assuming that this format is glacially slow and you could just throw random 7-drops in your deck that don't win the game. So I'm at like a D+ on this. It's really expensive. If the format turns out to be slow, this obviously goes way up, but I'm not sold on the format being super slow, so D+ for Howling Giant. Up next is Leafkin Druid. Leafkin Druid is 1 and a green for a creature elemental druid at common. It's an 0/3, tap to add a green. If you control 4 or more creatures, add green instead. It's a 2-mana mana dork. I love 2-mana mana dorks. If I'm going to be playing 7-drops like Howling Giant, I better have me a Leafkin Druid, or 2 preferably. Some packs you might actually first pick this, or I might first pick it anyways, and it's a relatively high pick otherwise. Getting an extra mana if you're already ahead, now that's pretty win more, but why not? So yeah, I like Leafkin Druid quite a bit. I super don't mind 2-mana mana dorks, especially if they have a bit of an upside, and especially if they've got some nice toughness like 0/3. So Leafkin Druid, I've got it a B-. I think it's great. The final Leyline is here, Leyline of Abundance. Leyline of Abundance is 2 green for an enchantment at rare. If Leyline of Abundance is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. Whenever you tap a creature for mana, like Leafkin Druid, add an additional green. Pay 6 green, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This Leyline, kind of like the red one, I think I'm going to have to play with. I absolutely do not want to cast this, ever. That is the last thing I want to do. And the first ability, the first on the board ability, really only counts Leafkin Druid. I don't think there's any other way to tap a creature for mana. I guess there's the red one that taps for elemental mana. But yeah, you're not really getting any value off of that. So basically this is on the 6 green, put a +1/+1 counter on everything. which is a great effect, but 8 mana. That's a lot of mana. I just got done talking about how 7 mana for 9/9 power toughness total is maybe slow. So ultimately, this is probably just an F. This effect we had back in Innistrad on Gavany Township, and it cost 3 green white on a land. It was dumb. It was real good. This is probably way too expensive. Again, if the format is glacially slow, maybe this is actually good. I'm very heavily leaning towards this being an F, though. F for now for Leyline of Abundance. Up next is Loaming Shaman. Loaming Shaman is 2 and a green for a creature Centaur Shaman at uncommon. He's a 3/2. When Loaming Shaman enters the battlefield, target player shuffles any number of target cards from their graveyard into their library. It's pretty filler. It's a 3/2 for 3, which is like a C. You'll play it, you won't play it, it's going to be fine. And getting to shuffle any number of cards from your graveyard, which is probably all of them, or at least all of the non-lands or something, is fine, but it's not actually a terribly relevant thing in the vast majority of games. So this is not going to go any higher than just a C. C for Loaming Shaman. Up next is Mammoth Spider. Mammoth Spider is 4 and a green for a creature spider at common. It's a 3/5 with reach. We had this just recently in Ravnica Allegiance, I believe. Yeah, so like Plummet, which we haven't even gotten to yet, but spoiler alert, it's going to be main deckable in this format, I think. This card is more main deckable than it normally is. It already was kind of main deckable if you had spot for a 5-drop. It wasn't ideal, but in this format, it's going to stop those flyers. The one caveat here is that it's expensive. It's 5 mana. And a lot of the flyers are cheaper than that, which means by the time this comes down, it might have been a little bit too late. But as long as you're not just dead, it's going to stabilize really well. So I think Mammoth Spider is like a C+ in this set, whereas it's more of like a C, C-, maybe even a D+ in some other sets, just because of all those flyers. So I'm going to start playing Mammoth Spider as a C+. I think it's going to feel better in this set because of all the flying stuff. Up next is Might of the Masses. Might of the Masses is a single green mana for an instant at uncommon. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature you control. It's obnoxious. It frequently just says win the game because you attack with your team of 5 creatures and they block 4 of them, leaving the 2/2 that who cares about a 2/2, and surprise, that 2/2 is a 7/7 and they're dead. That being said, there is all those situations as well where this is just a combat trick that trades or keeps a creature alive or is +1/+1 or +2/+2, which is not great. That's less than a giant growth. So it is variable, but it does have that giant obnoxious clause on it. You obviously have to know what's going on in your deck. If you're a little bit creature light, if maybe your plan is sort of a creature and then another creature and then a big one, and that's how I'm going to win, well, Might of the Masses might not be how you win. But if your plan is creature, Might of the Masses is going to be great. So a little bit deck dependent, but I've got this at a C. It'll go up or down depending on your deck. Up next is Natural End. Natural End is 2 and a green for an instant at common. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. You gain 3 life. What if we took Naturalize and made it cost 1 more mana? Costs 33% more, but you gain 3 life off of it. That doesn't really excite me, but you'll still use this if you need it. It's going to sit in your sideboard. The artifact and the enchantments in this set aren't so good at uncommon and common that you need this in your main deck. So pick this very late, put it into your side deck, and if you see something, which you're not even guaranteed to ever see something that's scary, you can side this in. So it's a D, maybe a D+. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's sideboard only for Natural End. Up next is Netcaster Spider. Netcaster Spider is 2 and a green for a creature spider at common. It's a 2/3 with reach, but whenever it blocks a creature with flying, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This kills almost every flyer in the set, except for some of the rare ones. This card comes down on turn 3. This is probably better than Mammoth Spider. I think I'd rather have 2 of these rather than have 1 of these and 1 Mammoth Spider. So I'm tempted to push this up to a B- in this specific set. I think it's going to play really well. And it is just a 3-drop, which means Maybe your opponent stumbles and doesn't quite have a creature or a blockable creature on turn 3 or turn 4, and you can get in for a little bit of damage here or there. Whereas Mammoth Spider, well, you're asking a lot for your opponent to not have any creatures by the time a 5-drop comes down. So Netcaster Spider, I think, might actually play like a B- in this format. I don't really want to give it a B- because you're not picking it super, super, super highly. So let's just keep it at a C+. Yes, I know that's the same grade I gave to Mammoth Spider, and I think this is better. Like I said, I don't care about the grades. They're floaty. Listen to what I'm saying about the cards. Up next is Nightpack Ambusher. Nightpack Ambusher is 2 green for a creature wolf at rare. It's a 4/4 with flash. Other wolves and werewolves, there are no werewolves in the set, you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't cast a spell this turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. This card looks fantastic. It's a 4/4 for 4. Awesome. It's got flash. Awesome. It makes my other wolves bigger. Well, I gotta find some wolves, but there are some for you to pick in here, not only in green, but also in red. Actually, no, Packmastiff is a hound, not a wolf, never mind. But there's some in green that you can grab. And even if you don't have any, if you pass the turn without casting a spell, well, there you go. You just made a 2/2, but it's actually a 3/3. This card seems fantastic and a stone cold bomb. I'm first picking this every single time I see it. I'm taking this over removal. This card is great. Solid, solid A for Nightpack Ambusher. Not quite an A+. It is just a 4/4. It's not flying over to end the game next turn or anything, but it's gonna do a lot. Solid A for Nightpack Ambusher. Up next is Overcome. Overcome is 3 green for a sorcery. At uncommon, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. You might have heard tales of Overrun. It was a terrifying and absolutely game-ending card. It was this card, but it cost 1 more green mana, and it gave +3/+3. Then this card was printed in Hour of Devastation, and we were all terrified, and it turned out it actually sucked. +2/+2 is not +3/+3. That's a huge change, it turns out, and Overcome was just not relevant in Hour of Devastation, and I don't think this format's going to be any different. You're paying a lot of mana for one of these spells that has sort of a clause on it that says you need to win the game with this turn. It's kind of like Fog in that way, where you're going to see games won by Overcome. What you're not going to see is Overcome cast in games where their opponent had it, but it didn't do anything. So it's a card that's going to have a 100% win rate, but it's not going to have a 100% cast rate. So I'm at a D- on this. I was fooled once thinking it was going to be insane and just like Overrun, and I'm not going to get fooled again. D- for Overcome. Up next is Overgrowth Elemental. Overgrowth Elemental is 2 and a green for a creature elemental at uncommon. It's a 3/2. When Overgrowth Elemental enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on another target elemental you control. Whenever another creature you control dies, you gain a life. If that creature was an elemental, put a +1/+1 counter on Overgrowth Elemental. It's a whole lot of text, but this is a very good elemental build-around creature. If you're the elemental deck, you want to be grabbing one of these. It's a 3/2 for 3, which means it's a base of like a C. It's a totally fine filler. And if it does have an elemental to throw a counter on it, then it's definitely a flat-out C+. And if you have elementals dying around you, which I think if you're green-red and you have like a bunch of those 1/1s or elemental cats or elemental lizards or whatever, then this is going to generate a fair bit more value. I think this is like a B- in the well-built red-green elementals deck, and even outside of it, I think it's probably a C at worst, and a C+ if you can get that first counter off. Star of the show, Plummet. Plummet is up next. 1 and a green for an instant at common, destroy target creature with flying. There is so much flying in this set across all of the colors, and obviously especially in blue, white, and red, that I think this card is going to be main deckable. In Dragons of Tarkir, this card was main deckable. For most of you probably watching and playing, you haven't seen really a set where Plummet has been main deckable, but I think this is going to be one of them. I think this is actually around a C+. You're probably just always going to have a target for this, and it's relatively cheap to kill a creature at instant speed. I am not going to start this in my sideboard. I'm going to start this in the main board, and I think it's going to be pretty good. C+ for Plummet. Up next is Pulse of Murasa. Pulse of Murasa is 2 and a green for an instant at uncommon. Return target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. Nope, I don't really like these effects. I don't like spending a card to return what hopefully is a good card, but may just not have a target. And gaining me 6 life for the joy of doing that? Big meh. I've got no interest in Pulse of Murasa. This card's been printed a number of times, and every single time I never play it. F for Pulse of Murasa. Up next is Rabid Bite. Rabid Bite is 1 and a green for a sorcery at common. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. It's green's cheap, very good removal, and it's very good removal at that. Bite is better than Fight because your creature can be a 3/3 and kill a 3/3 without dying. Obviously, you do need a creature of big enough size, so we can't quite label this as the most premium of removal, but it's still very, very good. I had this at a B-. I think it's actually just a B. It's a very good card. The fact that you have to have a creature means that you sometimes don't first pick this over really good efficient creatures, but you'll still pick this quite highly and you'll play every copy you can get. B for Rabid Bite. Up next is Season of Growth. Season of Growth is 1 and a green for an enchantment at uncommon. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. Whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, draw a card. Nope. Nope. Scry 1 on creature fall is not worth a card, and targeting my own creatures? Why am I doing that? Rabid Bite, I guess, but I'm not somebody who's playing a whole bunch of combat tricks in green. My creatures should just be big enough anyways. I don't like playing a whole bunch of auras, and I'm not playing a whole bunch of auras while also playing a do-nothing enchantment. This is just an F. It's another trap card. It's another card that has some good words on it, and it's just not worth a card and 2 mana and your turn to actually play this. So F for Season of Growth. Sedge Scorpion is up next. Sedge Scorpion is a single green mana for a creature Scorpion at common. It's a 1/1 with Death Touch. It is Typhoid Rats, but in green. It's great. Pinchy is awesome. Just like Typhoid Rats, just like the Vampire of the Dire Moon, we'll say was the name of that card in the black set review. It's very good. It's a C+. I will play probably just every copy of Sedge Scorpion I can get. It's good in green, as good as it was in black. C+ for Sedge Scorpion. Up next is Shared Summon. Shared Summons is 3 green for an instant at rare. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards with different names, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. I don't really like playing tutors in limited, especially not expensive ones. Diabolic Tutor, of course, is the most modern sort of example of this, a 5 mana tutor that lets you go and get a card. This one's different. It gets 2 instead of 1, and what I didn't notice and recorded a whole thing giving this card an F is this one's an instant. It's an instant. That makes it a little tiny bit better because you can hold up some removal or something and then cast this at the end of your opponent's end step if they didn't happen to need that removal. So this is better. I'm still not sold on it being great. I would rather just draw a creature. I would rather just have real stuff in the deck because you do have that potential of drawing your good stuff, and this just gets you mediocre stuff, but you know, it's probably going to all balance out that I think this card's going to be fine. It's not a rare that I'm ever going to be excited to pick, and I don't think I'm going to go any higher than a C+ on this. It's a very late pick for me, and odds are I'm never going to play it because people are going to go, whoa, it's a rare, it's good, and I'm just never going to have a chance to take it. So we'll go with a C+ on Shared Summons, I suppose. It's a tutor, but it's instant speed, so it's got to be better than I think. Up next is Shifting Ceratops. Shifting Ceratops is 2 green for a creature dinosaur at rare. It's a 5/4. This spell can't be countered. Protection from blue. So it's a cycle of creatures with protection, but not all at the same rarity. Pay a single green mana. Shifting Ceratops gains your choice of reach, trample, or haste until end of turn. Well, this one's rare, of course, because it's super playable. This is a 5/4 for 4, which is great, and for a single mana it can get haste, so maybe it's a 5 mana 5/4 with haste. It can get reach when it needs to eat a flyer out of the air, which why is a 4-legged stubby dinosaur having reach? I don't know. This should have been a Brontosaurus or something. Maybe they don't run fast, I don't know. and it can get trample when that's relevant. This creature's just super, super, super solid and undercosted for what it does. And some amount of the time, you're just going to rack up free wins because your opponent's going to have blue creatures and you're going to go, ha ha ha, take 5, take 5, take 5, you're dead. I guess one more 5 has to be put in there to deal 20. Yeah, this card just seems really good. It seems like a strong first pick that isn't an instant game-winning bomb. Kind of the definition of like a B+. I don't think we'll go into an A-. It'll feel like an A- or even higher when you are against that blue deck. But yeah, this is a great B+, a very strong first pick for shifting Ceratops. Up next is Silverback Shaman. Silverback Shaman is 3 green for a creature Ape Shaman at common. It's a 5/4 with trample. When Silverback Shaman dies, draw a card. It's a 5/4 trample for 5. Sure, that's fine. 5/5 would be better, but okay. When it dies, then unfortunately your opponent can probably block and kill this, though it might take a double block to do it, or a combat trick or something. You get to draw a card. That's all totally fine. This card is super, super fine. It's like a C+. It does everything that I want it to do, and if my opponent doesn't answer it, they die, and if they answer it, I draw a card. C+ for Silverback Shaman. Thicket Crasher is up next. Thicket Crasher is 3 and a green for a creature elemental Rhino at common. It's a 4/3 with trample. Other elementals you control have trample. Sure, seems fine. It's a 4/3 trample, which can be a little bit scary. It's kind of the lower end of being scary trampler. And if your other elementals get trample and you're in that deck, awesome. It's a solid C, and in an elemental deck, it's going to go right up to a C+. So C+ for Thicket Crasher. Up next is Thrashing Brontodon. Thrashing Brontodon is 1 green for a creature dinosaur at uncommon. It's a 3/4. Pay 1 generic mana and sacrifice it. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Bront's back, and Bront is great. 3/4 for 3 is a really, really good body, and sometimes the ability might be relevant. Probably not terribly often. You'll probably just always prefer to have the 3/4 going on, but a totally fine C+. It's undercosted for what it is. Solid, solid, solid C+ for Thrashing Brontodon. Up next is Veil of Summer, the final color hoser. Veil of Summer is a single green mana for an instant at uncommon. Draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn. This one's the worst one by far. So single mana, instant speed, draw a card if my opponent cast a blue or black spell. Okay, like I'm not siding that in ever. A card that simply reads pay a green cycle, maybe, is not the best. Spells you control can't be countered this turn, that's not relevant. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and black until end of turn. Well, this is kind of like a green counter spell, but only to targeted removal, which is not great. This card is way too narrow even as a color hoser, so I really don't think I'm siding this in even against blue or black. If I'm against blue and black and I see that they have multiple counter spells or a lot of removal or something like that, maybe I bring this in, maybe, but I don't even know what I would cut that would make this card that would be better or that would be worse than this card. So I think this is like a D-. I think this is the worst of the color hosers by far, and I'm not super excited to be playing this one to the sideboard. Definitely not a D+++ like the others. Some of the others. Our last Planeswalker is up next, Vivien Arkbow Ranger. Vivien Arkbow Ranger is 1 green for a legendary Planeswalker Vivien at Mythic. She starts with 4 loyalty. +1, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 target creatures, so you can do 1 on each or 2 on 1. They gain trample until end of turn. -3, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or Planeswalker it fights. It bites. -5, you may choose a creature card you own from outside the game, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Vivien's fine. She's not insane, she's not exciting, she's just a fine Planeswalker. The casting cost is easily the absolute worst part here, but her +1 is just fine. I'll take 2 counters distributed how I want any day of the week. Her -3 is cool. Bite spells are always great, but I don't know if I'm ever going to pay 1 green bite and then I don't get to do it again for a very long time. And her ultimate is dumb. It's pointless. So for anybody who doesn't know, outside of the game means your sideboard. You can't bring a binder to pre-release full of all the amazing green creatures that you want but didn't draft or didn't open in your sealed pool. It's just what's in your sideboard. So what are you getting out of your sideboard that's not already in your deck? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. She's still a fine pick. But that casting cost hurts, man. That casting cost hurts. I really want her in pack 3 when I'm already solidly green. I've got her at like a B+, but there is that caveat that you must be able to cast her. And honestly, a B+ might even be a little bit high. Yeah, maybe not with the bite for the -3 at least once. B+ for Vivian Arcbow Ranger. Not great, but fine for a Planeswalker. Voracious Hydra is up next. Voracious Hydra is green X for a creature Hydra at rare. It's an 0/1. It's got trample. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters, of course. And when Voracious Hydra enters the battlefield, choose one. Double the number of counters on it, or it fights target creature you don't control. This Hydra looks amazing. It's super, super, super good. 6 mana, and you're looking at a 4/5 that fights. I'd play that every day of the week, and I'd first pick that every day of the week. Or if it doesn't have to fight, it's an 8/9 trample. That's going to fight something. Yeah, this is a snap first pick. It's absolutely amazing. It's, I guess, basically not good on turn 3 or 4. Yeah, this card's great. It's super, super good. I think it's just another A+. I think this might be one of the best cards in the set as well. A+ for Voracious Hydra. I think it's fantastic. Vorstkla is up next. Vorstkla is 4 green for a creature elemental horror at common. It's a 7/7. That's it. This is infinitely worse than Colossal Dreadmaw. Lacking trample is a huge downgrade from everybody's favorite 4 green big creature. You generally should never play this. It's big, but it can be chump blocked forever while your opponent finds an answer, kills you in the air, etc. I'm going to avoid playing this at all costs as like a D-, unless I have that Rhino that gives my elementals trample. If I can give this trample, sure, I'll maybe put it in. Giving this extra power doesn't really do anything for me. Having this being around, giving something else +1/+0 doesn't do anything for me. But if I have the trample elemental rhinos, then maybe I put this into my deck. But outside of that deck, I never want to play a Vorstkla. We've seen this card before and it was awful. Obviously, relevant creature type this time around, but still not great unless you definitely have the ways of giving it trample, I think. Up next is Wakeroot Elemental. Wakeroot Elemental is 4 green for a creature elemental at rare. It's a 5/5, pay green. That's 5 green. Untap target land you control. It becomes a 5/5 elemental creature. With haste, it's still a land. And not until end of turn. It stays around for good. That activated ability cost sure is a thing that you can basically never ensure you're going to be able to pay for. Do you remember Gigantosaurus from the last set? It was very hard to cast reliably in any deck that wasn't mono green. This ability is going to be very hard to activate in any deck that isn't mono green. This is a 5/5 for 6. That's about it. Games where you can start turning your lands into 5/5s will be a pretty tough game for your opponent, but I just don't know how often you're actually going to be able to pull off green in a 2-color deck. I think this might just be Gigantosaurus. I think you only play this if you do pull off a mono green deck. This is like an A in that deck, but I think in most decks this is more of just a C-. It's a 4 green 5/5. That's about it. C- for Wakeroot Elemental. It's another rare that people are going to pick because, ooh, rare, and I'm not going to see it. Wolfkin Bond is up next. Wolfkin Bond is 4 and a green for an enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature. When Wolfkin Bond enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. You might remember Knightly Valor, an uncommon from M19 and some earlier sets, and how it was great. This is basically that, but common. Must be awesome, right? I thought so too. A lot of us thought so too when it was first printed. But it turns out taking vigilance away from the creature and from the token, it's actually a pretty big deal. This card was and likely still is just too overcosted for what it does. It has all the usual aura problems. You do get a 2/2 regardless of what happens. Maybe if they bounce it in response, or kill it in response to you casting this, it feels really bad. And maybe you get the wolf synergy, I suppose. But I'm going to stay far away from this card. I was already burned on this card, thinking it was going to be great the first time around, and I'm not willing to go down that road again for the start. So D- for Wolfkin Bond. Yeah, if I have the Wolf Lord, I'm just winning. I don't need to play this if I have the Wolf Lord. Our second last card is Wolfrider's Saddle. Wolfrider's Saddle is 3 and a green for an artifact equipment at uncommon. When Wolfrider's Saddle enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token, then attach Wolfrider's Saddle to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and can't be blocked by more than one creature. Equip cost of 3 generic mana. So it's a 3/3 for 4 that cannot, or sorry, has to be chump blocked. Well, people aren't really chump blocking a 3/3, but again, you maybe have wolf synergies and you can equip this off to a bigger creature perhaps to stop the chump blocking, but all of that's pretty slow. But this is still just a hill giant at its base stats, and I really have to fight my anti equipment kind of bias that I have, because like the sword and unlike the mask, I think this one's fine because it is a hill giant. That's not something that you would normally play. That's usually a C-, but it's a hill giant with the value of when it dies, you get this equipment. You never really cast this equipment. You cast a hill giant. You still have to pay 3 to equip this to something else, but you sort of got a free card. So I think this is probably a C+? Probably a C+. We'll go with a C+ on this. Obviously, if you have big creatures that you can make into must-be chumped blockers as opposed to multiple blockers, it's going to be better. But yeah, we'll start with a C+ on this. Yeah, it's interesting. If they ever bring back living weapons, I'm in trouble, because I am not going to be able to rate those without thinking, oh, equipment, bad. And our final card for today, our final mono-colored card, is Woodland Champion. Woodland Champion is 1 and a green for a creature elf scout at uncommon. She's a 2/2. Whenever one or more tokens enters the battlefield under your control, put that many +1/+1 counters on Woodland Champion. Pure C+. It's a bear with an upside. The upside may not be relevant in your deck. You may not have a way to make tokens, and that's fine. You'll still play this card. But if you have one way, well, it gets a little tiny bit better. And if you can pull off the tokens deck, which appears to be sort of in green-white, the green-white signpost on common, as it were, does make tokens just for mana being pumped into it. So there are some ways to do that and some ways to get counters on this. So this can grow somewhat fast, possibly to fast, depending on how your deck is built. But they're just a great C+ for Woodland Champion. So that's going to wrap it up for green. There's some pretty good cards in here. There's a couple of A+. There's that Voracious Hydra, which I think is absolutely crazy. And no, there's no other A- or A+. I thought there was a second one. Anyways, yeah, A+ for that Voracious Hydra. Super excited to play this set. As I've said, it looks so much like M13. It reminds me of M13, and that was one of my favorite draft formats. Still is one of my favorite draft formats of all time. Let me know what cards you're excited for in green here, what you agree with, disagree with, talk with me, talk with each other in the comments down below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me over on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. Remember, Twitch on Canada Day, July 1st, I will be playing M20 thanks to Wizards of the Coast inviting me to the Arena Early Access event. We'll be playing Sealed all day. I don't think I'll be playing the draft. We're allowed to draft for a couple of hours. I don't know if I'll do it. We'll see. But check that out. As always, you can go over to inkedgaming.com, use the promo code ManaLeak10, all one word, 10 is the number, to get 10% off your order. You can help the channel out by clicking thumbs up, subscribe, and sharing this content. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow for the rest of the cards.